Hello everyone, I'm Nnamdi Odipo. We're live in Abuja and this is the Ballot. Again, and many thanks for joining us tonight. With the presidential National Assembly elections done and maybe not dusted yet, but with the president-elect now in place, we're shifting our focus on the ballot to the next round of elections, that is the governorship and state House of Assembly elections. 24 states or so will be having governorship elections, while the assembly elections will hold in all states of the federation. Of course, the Federal Capital Territory is exempted from the next round of state elections, with no governorship position or assembly seats available for the FCT as per the Constitution. We'll kick off tonight with highlights of some major election news events. Let's roll.
The road has been long, yet we walk it.
More messages pouring as global community congratulates Nigeria's president-elect.
This is not the end, but the beginning of the journey for a better of new Nigeria.
Labour Party ramps up crusade against results of last Saturday's presidential election. Also tonight, we review the presidential polls, the process, conduct, the outcome, and why some are trying foul. Messages are still pouring in from across the world congratulating Nigeria's president-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu, his party, the All Progressives Congress, but importantly, Nigerians for the successful conduct of the presidential election. A message from the United States government congratulates Nigerians and say the competitive election represents a new era for Nigerians' politics and democracy. UK's Prime Minister Rashid Sunak, in his message, congratulated the president-elect on his victory at the polls, pledging to work together to further the ties between the United Kingdom and Nigeria. Similar messages have also come from other world leaders and regional blocs. Meanwhile, though the APC is still in commemorative mode, the party seems to have also realized that the best way to thank their supporters and indeed Nigerians for their recent electoral victory is to work hard enough to mend existing national divides and unite the nation towards a common goal of unity, peace, and development. President-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu indicated that this was the direction to go when he received members of the APC National Working Committee earlier today at his private residence in Abuja.
Country and all of Nigeria. Like I said, it's the dawn of new day.
In the meantime, we now know for a fact that the Labour Party will definitely be heading to the courts to challenge the outcome of last Saturday's presidential election. The presidential candidate of the party, Peter Obi, who made his first public appearance and comment on the election at a media event in Abuja, urged his supporters to remain peaceful and calm, promising to challenge the results of last weekend's presidential election in court.
Let me humbly and most respectfully appeal to all Nigerians to remain peaceful, law-abiding, and conduct themselves in most responsible manner. Please be assured that Dati and I, and indeed all of us, this is not the end, but the beginning of the journey for a better new Nigeria.
Now we begin tonight's interviews first with a review of the process, conduct, and the outcome of the presidential election and the emergence of the president-elect Bola Ahmed Tinubu of the All Progressives Congress. My guest is Professor Emmanuel Remi Ayade. He's a professor of political institutions, governance, and public policy, Department of Political Science, University of Ibadan. Welcome to the program, Prof.
Yeah, good evening, and thank you for inviting me to your show.
Very glad to have you join us. So, Prof, I have heard all sorts of descriptions used, for the just concluded presidential election. And I'm sure, most fiercely competitive people would easily relate because in such contestations, especially fierce ones like the ones we've had, you would understand that it cannot be 100% perfect. Okay, so would it not be going overboard for some persons or groups to begin to demand for something that sounds somewhat like throwing away a child with the dirty bathwater when they call for outright cancellation of the vote? Does your own assessment of the process, of course, leading to the emergence of a winner, does that make you come close to making any such recommendation or something that comes close to an outright cancellation of a process that may have been flawed, but not, depending on what you think? I'd just like your take on this issue.
Think parties to the election have a right to raise objections if they think that the elections were muddled up. And whatever they demand will not happen simply because they say so. I think, given what has transpired, they have to follow due process. And as we, from where we are now, it is only the courts that can call or cancel the election. So, my own take is really that if they think that there's sufficient grounds to claim that malpractices, mismanagement of the election, technological glitch, or any other reason they adduce for the cancellation, they have to go to the courts to produce the evidence. And I think if the courts are convinced that there's sufficient grounds to think that the outcome of the election does not reflect the will of the Nigerian people, the courts can cancel the elections.
I know on the NTA we've talked to you about this matter, but I'd just like for the sake of emphasis or just so we get a sense of where you stand on this position. I do know that you monitored the elections. You were in our studios a couple of times. Give me your impression of the conduct of the election, leading from, starting rather from the processes that led to the to election day, which was the D-Day, up until the announcement of the results. If you were to give maybe not an expansive analysis of the process, but if you were to give a preliminary assessment of the elections as it were, what would your take or what would be your position?
Well, I think the description of the election has come on several times in the media. Observer groups, for which I was a part, different groups, as you know, have given different impression about what transpired on election day. But if we look at the build-up to election, the arrangements made by INEC looked very promising. We were thinking that this would be an exemplary election, given what we have experienced in Osun, Ekiti, Anambra, and so on, those off-season gubernatorial elections, where the beavers were first tested and tried. And we thought that what was going to happen on the 25th was just a national application of a field process that has already been tested in numerous elections. Unfortunately, at the beginning of the election, a serious logistics problem. The first has to do with the time of arrival of electoral materials and personnel. which was very disappointing in many places. Election material did not arrive until late in the day, and the election had to be conducted till in the wee hours of the following morning of the following day. So I think that's the first dent on the election, because it created a lot of tension. It affected the voting, the counting, and then, of course, more importantly, the uploading of the results for the polling units to the IRF portal, which was a very important part of the electoral process. And the idea is that uploading it into the IRF enhances the transparency of the process and forecloses the shenanigans that normally happens between the time the election results were announced and then when those result sheets are taken to the collation center. But unfortunately, uploading the results from the polling units directly to the IRF portal did not happen. And I doubt if the complete result is already in the portal as we speak. And on top of that, when we started looking at the few results that were uploaded into the IRF portal, there were lots of challenges in terms of what were actually uploaded, the content of the result sheets, and so on and so forth. And that is why even before the completion of the announcement of the results at the National Collation Center, the parties were already agitated and they started criticizing and calling for a halt to the process of announcing the results. But of course, the INEC chairman believed that what he had before him were satisfactory for him to continue the announcement, and he did just that and called the election, declaring Asiwaju Ahmed Tinubu as the president-elect.
So, Prof, I like how you have laid it all out, and so that will take me to this next question about, how does the phrase substantial compliance factor in a matter in law that translates to an omission of any or an essential part of a piece of law? I think in this case, the INEC guidelines, for the 2023 elections will be the case in point. I need you to put that against the core grievance of the opposition parties against INEC, especially as it pertains the presidential election and what Section 60, subsection 4 says about or concerning electronic transmission of results from BVAX to IREF. But then I need you to talk about substantial compliance within the confines of omissions consisting only of unimportant defects, perhaps by INEC, and two, would you say INEC's demonstration of, perhaps firm efforts to fully comply with standards, like, they talked about glitches that happened earlier in the day and how that substantially affected their inability or ability to upload results. Would you say efforts by INEC to redress, I don't know, choosing to use perhaps another option also implies that INEC did substantially comply with the provisions of law?
Well, I think the matter of establishing substantial compliance or non-compliance will have to be done in the law courts, and it will be the duty of the parties who are making the complaint, to prove that there's substantial non-compliance, and their legal team of what will know exactly what to do. And if you listen to the candidate of the Labour Party, you will see that their emphasis is on the process, and they said the process has to be followed, and they believe that the process was not substantially followed by INEC. But on the other hand, INEC admitted that they have some challenges with the management of the election, the technology especially, and then of course the logistic challenges. Whether there are sufficient call for a cancellation of the election is left for the courts to determine. But as at the time the announcements were going on and all of these issues were raised, the chairman said with what was before him, he was satisfied that the compliance with the guidelines was sufficient to conclude that the results reflect the will of the Nigerian people. Of course, he recognized the fact that there's need for there's provision for a review, and he said for a review to occur, the election has to be called first before a review can then be called. It can be done within 7 days, as provided by law. So what we are expecting is what follows. Since the elections have now been called, and the political parties are likely to make their complaints to INEC. And we expect INEC to do the needful. But more importantly, I think one of the major problems associated with the process is the very poor communication process coming from INEC. We didn't see a very spirited effort to reach out to the public, to reach out to the political parties and their agents concerning what should be done. They started having those, which I think I was absorbed with trying to deal with the technical challenges that they face with the portal. And that is why if you were following or you try to log into that portal, you notice that there were some substantial changes in the outlook of that portal in terms of if you click on the link, previously you will see drop down the boxes, but now you see that they move from that into a situation where you just go straight, to see the of what has been uploaded according to states up to polling units. So they were absorbed with addressing the technical glitch, and they forgot to their responsibility of communicating their challenges both to the electorate and also the political parties. In fact, not until in the evening of Sunday before we really got any direct communication from ANET relating to the challenges with the glitch in the technology.
So, Prof, I know you've somehow reiterated, the rights of aggrieved persons to seek redress through the legal way and all of that. I'd like for you to help me quickly touch on something. And I truly appreciate the crave to find a balance between accountability and reconciliation. And so how do we, within the context of engendering unity, balance, and in a period like this when we have frail nerves, people are tense and there's rising tension, what is the imperative? How do we balance or create a balance between the need to the need for unity, and then balance that with the need for justice? Justice now, not just for the active participants in the election, but also for the people who participated in the process, and some of them who feel shortchanged by institutions that otherwise guaranteed them that their vote will count.
Well, I think sometimes they say when two elephants fight, it's the grass that suffers. The election was very competitive, and interestingly, those who came out to vote actually made a lot of sacrifices for them to be able to exercise their franchise. In fact, some of them had to stay within the vicinity of the polling unit up till late in the night. Some of them donated their torchlights, their generators to ensure that the process did not collapse. But unfortunately, we had this situation. Now, you have to look at what the law says in terms of who has the right, to make a complaint, to go to court, to seek redress, and you must be a candidate or a political party that participates in that election. The electorate do not have the locus standi, as they say in legal parlance,
and that is true. And that is true, and I agree. That is true. I just wanted you to talk about, in balancing, well, it will seem like, okay, the politician now does the fight for the people, or whoever feels aggrieved. Okay, so I get that. Let me quickly flip our conversation to the raging debate and argument about the status of Abuja in determining the presidential election. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, and I'm talking about that
Yes,
provision. Yes, that provision of the Constitution that talks about a winner, a candidate must receive the plurality of national votes and over 25% of votes in at least 24 of the 36 states of the
yes.
federation, and the
And
FCT, the operational word
yes,
there being the and. I mean,
yes.
how do we begin? What's your take on this raging debate?
I've heard a lot of positioning by those who should know. I mean, the lawyers, and I've seen people argue that the FCT is not state, it's not the equivalent of a state capital for the purpose of this, and so on and so forth. Some even make a claim that the Supreme Court has made a previous judgment that it's something that is not required. I think, I don't know what the parties are saying and what they're going to do, whether they are still going to include that as part of their argument for the cancellation of the election. But it does seem that in all respect, apart from the status of the chief executive of Abuja, which is a minister rather than the governor, the constitution seems to treat Abuja like a state. So I'm not a lawyer. So
Okay.
in ordinary common sense, you would think that it's a conjunction. It says 24, the states and then Abuja. That you don't only have to win 25% in 24 states, you also have to win 25% in the Federal Capital Territory. But I've not seen the candidates laying emphasis on that. That's why I'm given to think that probably the lawyers who are claiming that there's a judgment to that effect which settled that issue. Maybe that's why they are not making a mountain of it. But I'm sure that by the time the fireworks begin in the court of law, I will begin to see whether that is an important factor.
Because at this point, it does seem like it is one for the court to determine as well. But you know what, Prof? The issue of voter apathy in Nigeria would seem to have assumed a monumental dimension. And I'm saying this against the backdrop of what we've seen play out in this in last Saturday's election. Over 93 million registered for the election, and we had just about 24 million voting in the exercise. As a matter of fact, less than 9 million, about 8.7 million voters determined who became president in a nation of over 200 million. So it does look like Nigerians maybe crying foul every time, and each time an election season comes up and they complain about politicians. But speaking honestly, how can we as a people effect the kind of change and get those saintly leaders that we want if we do not participate majorly and actively in the process that will throw up such leaders? How can we reverse? And even though I know we've talked about this time and again, and civil societies are out there, political parties may or may not be doing what they should do to raise political consciousness and all of that. But this is an issue that continues to rage. How do we reverse the tide and make people become more participatory? Is it a function of just the citizen? Is it a function of our institutions? Where does the problem lie?
Well, I think that it's also as a result of the kind of provisions by the Constitution in terms of the electoral formula. I mean, you were saying that it's 8-point-something million. I mean, if you look at it very clearly, it's much more less than that, because you have to look at the margin of difference rather than the total score by the candidate as what determines it. It is the margin of difference. Then what is particularly very interesting is really that you have about 87 million PVCs collected.
That's true.
No, yeah, because you can even say, okay, let's overlook the total number of registered voters. So let's look at the PVCs, because the PVCs reflect those who actually have the means in terms of the qualification to vote. Because if you register and you don't have your PVC, you still can't vote. But if you have your PVC, you can vote. So we have 87 million people with their PVCs, and then we are talking about 24 million now. When I did a study of elections since 1999,
Okay.
what we found, the voter turnout has continued to fall, and many people
And
were
that
in
is
fact
very ironical, Prof. Because I did a study, but a very quick study, and I found out that for every year that we had an increase in population, we've also had a corresponding increase in the number of registered voters in Nigeria. And yet, in every election cycle, rather than have an increase in participation, we tend to have a decline and a reduction in participation. Are these not somewhat of a... I mean, these are paradoxes, as it will seem.
Absolutely, and it tells a lot about the quality of our democracy. It shows that participation, people are not excited about democratic rule. It also shows that the level of trust in government is dwindling. So they really don't trust the process, and unfortunately, it is the process again that is at issue, because if you don't have confidence in the process, the tendency is that you say, my vote doesn't really count. It's not worth the effort. They will continue to put anybody they want to put there anyway. That's the cross of the matter. And I think that the leadership should pay attention to that, and they should worry about the situation, because it goes deep to the legitimacy of not just the government, but of the state itself.
Very true.
And
very true, Prof. I hear you, and I hear you
and
loud.
then,
I hear you. And
yeah,
I
they
hear
can.
you loud. I mean,
People can feed into this discontent,
Yes.
to recruit all kinds of people for other purposes, which challenge, the integrity of the state.
So, like a hydra-headed monster, it does need a multifaceted approach to us solving this issue as well. I mean, this is something we all need to work on as a nation, and not just government, but of course, citizens do have a role to play. So I'd like to thank you so much. I'd like to thank Professor Emmanuel Remy, the Professor of Political Science, University of Ibadan, for coming on the ballot this night. I hope, Prof, that I've not kept you awake. I hope you're not one of the early beds. People who go to bed early. I do wish you a lovely night, and we hopefully will bring you back on the ballot before we wrap up the show this election season, to talk more about the governorship and state house of assembly elections going forward. Thank you so much for coming on the ballot.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. We are used to burning the midnight candle.
Oh yes, when you're scoring and marking scripts, that's very true.
When we are reading and doing research.
All right, then, time now for a short break. When we return, we shall talk a bit on Kano politics, the prospects of an upset, and whether or not the emergence of a dark horse is in the offing. Do stay. The Nigerian electoral system is seemingly simple, yet may be complicated for some.
It's for them to come and tell us what they have.
Running an election is equivalent to what? A job application.
I want him to identify the issues plaguing the common Nigerians.
PDP should focus on PDP and APC should focus on APC.
Let's show you what an election is all about as Nigerians pick the next president, governors and legislators. We interrogate their plans, question the rationale and review the prospects. Join us on the ballot.
To every politician, as the campaigns gain momentum and passions begin to rise, remember, the errors of your opponents do not make you a success. Do not run down your opponent and inflame passions to violence between and among your supporters. What counts is what you plan to do for the electorate and how you intend to relieve the sufferings and bring succor. Nigeria is in dire need of patriotic leaders at all levels, leaders who will make national development their priority. Concentrate on telling the electorate what you intend to do when you get into office. Focus on making your vision clear to the electorate. Don't engage in verbal abuses, fake news or speeches. Keep dealing with issues that will bring progress. You win the hearts and minds of the people by being above board, by being civil, patriotic, and showing empathy. Let's join hands to make the 2023 elections peaceful. A message from the National Orientation Agency.
Oh boy, this one where I read. You carry machete, you see carry gun. Wait till you want take and do self.
As I dey para like this, I don't vex.
Oh boy, calm down now.
Like this, like this, I dey go scatter those businesses. You know, say they scatter our people businesses, eh? You don't see them. See, I dey go there, as I dey go like, and they go show them better craze. They never see anything.
If you destroy their own for here, and they destroy your people own for that side, especially that your brother where they send you money, that way don't block. Oh. How you go take survive?
See, this way talk not true, but I see the vex.
Boy, calm down. Make we embrace peace. We peace and unity. Everybody.
My people, make we gum body with peace and unity. Make we learn to live as brothers and sisters, so that we country go feel move go permanent sides. This message now from the Federal Ministry of Information and Culture.
Thanks for staying with us. My next guest was a former special advisor media to the governor of Kano State, a journalist by profession. He did some freelancing with the CNN and has almost 2 decades of experience as a grassroots politician, I beg your pardon. Saliu Tanko Yakusa is currently the governorship candidate of the People's Redemption Party, PRP, in Kano State. Let me say quickly before we begin that it wasn't until sometime in February of 2021 that I became keenly interested in your politics. Before then, to me, you were the governor's media aide and son of foremost Nigerian politician, human rights activist, and former liaison officer to President Shehu Shagari Tanko Yakusa. I'm sure you're not one to be taken for granted, and I would like to see you prove it on the ballot this night. Welcome to the ballot, by the way, and I should ask, how is your dad these days? I hope he's doing well. We seem to be having an audio issue from Kano. I don't know if you can, I'm sure you can hear me. If you would want me to repeat my question, I just wanted to know how your dad was faring, but that's by the way. I just wanted to know how your dad was faring. Can you hear me, Saliu?
I can hear you.
You know, earlier on I was talking about your dad, but I wanted to know how he was faring. You seem to have gotten that. Forgive me for saying this, and it's not in a bad way, but you seem to have gotten that stubborn yet steadfast, speaking to power streak from him. I recall the comments you made in 2021, and I recall how it also led you leaving office at the time. You know, I recall your interrogation by the DSS and your subsequent arrest, twice, by the way. I'm not sure whether it was once or twice. But are you not concerned that could make you very unpopular within the circle that you operate? I mean within the political circle, even though it may endear you to the people. But do you think it's an asset that you want to keep or you want to have? And I know you're your own man, and we know how your dad does. He has this stoic trademark. But do you think it is necessarily an asset within today's political environment, especially amongst our politicians?
In my blood, in my DNA, from my father, and also from my political antecedents. So I do not have a problem with that, and I think, like I said, it is who I am, and I don't need to change for anything. But I think bottom line, the general public do understand and appreciate the fact that when things go wrong, especially people with voice need to speak up. They need to draw the attention of those that in the position to do something about it. This is the culture of Kano State. You know, if you remember, Kano is the home of Northern Elements Progressive Union, NEPU, which is the first political party in northern Nigeria. And also, Kano is home to the home of PRP, People's Liberation Party, which is the party that I am contesting under at the moment. So as you can see, it's inherent in the people of Kano to speak up against injustice, to speak up against anything that is unpopular or is not in tune with the people and what they stand for. So basically, I think the general public appreciates that, and I think it's something that we'll continue with.
You know what? I know I read somewhere about you having, or saying rather, that you have no fear about the APC or the PDP in Kano, and you know about your chances in the coming governorship elections. But shouldn't you be fidgeting right now, there, in that very seat you're sitting, especially with what the NMPP, I should say, did just last Saturday in Kano? And I tell you something, people seem to believe now, more than ever, that if NMPP is going to win any election in Nigeria, it will be Kano. Are you telling me you're not shaking in that seat that you're sitting in your heart of hearts?
I think for those that know me, particularly on online, know that one of my mantra is zero tension. That means there's no tension. And if you know the politics of Kano, let me take you a little back. In 2019, in the first round of the election, APC cleared all the seats. Almost all the 24 House of Reps was cleared by APC in 2019, and in the second round of the election, PDP back then cleared majority of the seats, including state assembly members, and the election had to go into a rerun. So if this tells you that the people are able to differentiate between the elections and are able to differentiate between the candidates, and it is a state that has produced a lot of onsets in the past. If you look at 2003, when Malam Ibrahim Shekaro produced an upset when he contested under APP. If you look at way back as 1993, when Kabir Gaya was a dark horse and he came and pulled an upset. If you go back in the days of PRP 1979, nobody thought the PRP could win against the National Party, which is NPN, and so it has been entrenched in the DNA of Kano people, and I am optimistic. Because this time around, people are looking for competent candidates. This time around, people are looking for candidates with capacity. And I believe we offer that to the people of Kano State. They have had a chance to go through our blueprint, our manifesto, and what we have for the people of the state. The common thing in Kano State is that I am the best candidate in terms of manifesto and our policies, our programs. And I think based on this, the people of Kano State will vote for the right candidate, irrespective of the platform. So I think this is why we are optimistic, and we are not bothered by what happened in last election. It's people were courteous enough to give their votes to Rabi Musa Konkoso, but that does not mean they're going to do the same for the governorship election. So we are quite optimistic, and we look very set to take over Kano, inshallah, come 11th March on the day of the election.
You referenced two key things for me. You referenced people, or rather Nigerian voters now voting for candidates and policies rather than parties. And then you mentioned your blueprint, your plans for Kano. I know you have big economic plans for Kano. I did a quick check on your blueprint, maybe too quick. So I couldn't particularly glean everything. But then, you know, I know Kanu's economy depends hugely on agriculture, and there's a study somewhere out there that says that it says three-fourths of the total population in Kanu, performs jobs that are agricultural in nature. I know you plan to cash in on advancements in trade and commerce, like e-transactions and all of that. But my question to you is this: what kind of linkages, whether institutional or infrastructural, do you plan for traditional marketplaces in Kanu to help them retain their relevance in contemporary business activities?
Kano being a commercial city for as way back hundreds of years, of course, I think if I get your question correctly, I think for me, what my interest is for the commercial activity of the state is to modernize it and make it a bit more inclusive, so that the petty traders, the smaller traders, will have access to financing, have access to funding, so that they can increase their capital, and also not just increase the capital, but also improve on small and medium-scale industries in the state, so that they can transform from being traders to also manufacturers, be it within their locality, with 10 staff, 20 staff, or 30 or more. So I think this is what will propel development in Kano State. So we need to change how the commercial activities are being done in the state, so that we move more into production. Like I said, we don't want to be petty traders that are buying and selling, but they have the capacity to become producers as well. And I think this is one of the things that we are looking at, particularly in the agricultural sector, so that they can get the raw materials are readily available in the state, and you provide an enabling environment, and they can start producing locally using the raw materials that we have in the state. So this is what we want to do. We want to leverage on our raw materials, our ability to farm and improve on agriculture, so that our commercial activities in the state can transform, like I said, into from a commercial state to a production state, in terms of the industries, small, medium, and large industries that we intend to focus on. And this is why we have a big plan for the economy in general.
A fantastic plan, but financing businesses alone would not bring about the kind of transformation that you've just envisioned. Because if you recall, I said what institutional frameworks, and I would agree, and readily true, that financing businesses is institutional. I did also say what infrastructural linkages would you be willing to create? And I'll give you an example. I know somewhere in Kano, there's a massive tomato market. How do you intend to link the farmer in the tomato farm to the off-taker somewhere perhaps in the outskirts of Kano, who has another linkage with a processor, somewhere else in another part of Kano? Because if you were to provide just finances for these different groups that I've just mentioned, it just might not take you to the kind of transformation that you're saying. And the tomato sector is just one of the many sectors in Kano that you can actually focus your attention on. Additional marketplaces here.
Yes, I'm having a bit of difficulty with hearing you, so I get to hear part of it and I miss part of it. So I definitely miss that part, but I get what you mean. And what I have to say to this is that it's an inclusive development plan that we have. It's not just about financing. I had that aspect, and that is why I responded with that. But what we are talking about is that, first and foremost, we have some of these institutions that are readily available. You have some of these institutions that have been there, but have been made to become redundant. So these institutions will be strengthened. We have NADA, we have RECA, and others that are specifically there to serve the economic development of the state. So one of the things that we want to do is that we want to take all these things that, like the processing plant that you're talking about, it is not for them to farm in the villages and then, find a way of coming it down to the city. So we want to decentralize all these things so that we can make sure that they have everything readily available in their localities, so that it can be done there. We want to also focus on extension workers, for instance, in terms of increasing agricultural production in the state, but also we want to also do mini grids of electricity so that they can have electricity to set up these factories, processing factories, in their locality. They don't need to come to Kano to do that. We also want to make sure that, we have 5 emirates that were created, in the state. So we want to make sure that each of these emirates becomes a mega city on its own, so that you bring the people closer to everything that they need, and as such, development will happen across board. So we have a big plan of developing the rural areas, so that the only need, you will address the issue of rural-urban migration. So the only need for any person in the rural area to come to the city is just for a visit, but every other thing that he needs in terms of economic well-being, social well-being, and others will be provided for him in the villages. This is what we have planned in our manifesto, and these are some of the ways that we believe we will have even development in the state, not just within the metropolitan area, which consists of only about 78 local governments in a state that has 44 local governments. So our concern, our priority is to have even development across the state, so that you don't need to come to the city if you need anything in terms of socio-economic development.
I heard you throw power into the mix somewhere in there while you were explaining. So I am sure that as a media marketing consultant yourself, you're familiar with product planning and model analysis. So I have no doubt that you've already done your own work. You've done a model analysis of the needs and desires of the people of Kano. What is the makeup of that model analysis, and just give me 5 targets that rank highest in public expectations at the moment in Kano? Do you think it's something that you can meet with good leadership?
Really, because you see, before we come up with our blueprint, we look at what is important, what are the things that the people of Kano State need. And I can tell you for free that economic growth is one of it. It's one of the major things that is needed. And there are 3 things that propel development in any society. The first is energy, which is the power that you mentioned. The second is transportation. You have to have effective transportation. That is why, despite the development, economic growth in Lagos State today is still not. It was one of the terrible places to live because of the congestion in traffic and what have you. And then the third one is information technology. So these are the 3 key vehicles that propel development. Pardon?
I said you can't use that word. Lagos. But not to worry, please just go ahead.
But basically what I mean is that you need these 3 things to propel development, and this is why we tailored our proposal to the needs of Kano people. First and foremost, we have to focus on economic growth, and the 2 areas we are focusing on economic growth is power, for industrialization and agriculture, which was what I was referring to. And then you have issue of education. The level of education is going down in Kano State. We are suffering from lack of qualitative teachers in the state, and this is something that needs to be addressed, and we have also included that in our manifesto. You have the issue of access to quality healthcare. This is also one of the needs of the people of Kano State, and we're also focusing on the issue of healthcare. We have a bigger problem, which is environment, which our politicians are not even addressing. The projection is that this year's there's a possibility of flooding this year in Kano State, and I have not had a single candidate in Kano State talking about what they need to do to address the potential flooding that will ravage the state. So environment is another key area in Kano State under my administration that we want to focus on. And then, of course, the public service reform. Public service reform, we have seen the result of that under the administration of Kaduna State Governor Mali El-Rufai. We have seen that, how that has brought development in Kaduna State. And we have also seen the need for it in Kano State. There are a lot of issues. Pensioners are in terrible stage at the moment. They are not being paid their pensions for years, and so on.
Losing time, you've given us an extra one. Instead of 5, you've given us 6, and I get all of that, and I've seen your targets. I just hope as part of your plan, there is you also intend to create linkages amongst all of these sectors so that you have even development and not one sector developing at the expense of the other. But just very quickly before we wrap up our conversation, I'd like for you to clarify something for me. You said in the media about not backstabbing your boss, your former principal, but you are often quick to dismiss his party. Their candidates and their policy in Kano, I beg your pardon, as obsolete and not in tune with what the people of Kano need at this point in time. You're a politician yourself. Do you believe character should be at the base of what people look out for in those contending for public office?
Of the most important quality of leadership. And I think, let me take you a little bit back to what you mentioned about backstabbing my former principal. The tradition is that once you have a fallout with your principal, the next thing is people run to the media houses to insult, to expose and do all these things to their former principals just because there's a falling out. And what I am saying is that I did not know the governor when he appointed me as DG Media. I did not know him. He was looking for someone with experience in mainstream media and social media, and my name keeps coming up. So that is how he appointed me without knowing me. He called me for an interview and that night, and the next day I was appointed as the DG Media. So at least I think that was highly based on merit. We had a successful time working together for about 6 years. Then if I left his government based on my disagreements with the federal government, not the state government, I think there's no basis for me to start dragging him and insulting him. So that is that. But like you said, issue of leadership, it revolves around character, revolves around competence, it revolves around the ability to surround yourself with the right team. It's a quality that a lot of people don't have. A lot of people don't have the ability to identify competent people and surround themselves with, so that they can deliver on good leadership. So leadership has a lot of qualities, and I think it's important to pay attention to that when deciding who the people want to elect as their leader, whether be it governor or whatever it is.
Great. Very quickly, I would like to move you along very quickly to the last segment of our program tonight. It's called Ticking the Boxes. In this instance, you will be presented with a couple of targets for Kano State, and you'll be made to choose one out of 3 options that reflect your view on their prospects. Of course, I'm talking about these targets are within a timeline of 4 years, starting from your swearing in as governor of Kano State, if so mandated by the good people of Kano. Ticking the Boxes is up next. Well, we'll just go straight into it, but very quickly, I'd like to tell you that these are public policy issues, and all of these targets, were gleaned from public opinion. I'll begin with target number 1 on our box there. If it's there on the screen, I would just like for my director to put it very well. That's it on the screen there. I'm sure you're seeing it, Saliu. The first target on the box there says end water scarcity in rural Kano. Is that a target that you think is realistic within 4 years to achieve? Is that an unrealistic target? Are you undecided on the matter?
On the issue of ending water scarcity in rural Kano, we already have a plan, which is to have 12 water treatment plants in the rural parts of Kano, different parts of Kano. I think at the moment we only have one. Yeah, it is
a realistic target for you? Realistic target for you? Realistic target for you?
I can hear you.
Ending realistic there for you.
Realistic for us, and
we'll move on to the next target on the budget, on the box there, a balanced budget. Do you think that is realistic within 4 years of the Saliu Tanko Yakasai administration, if so mandated, or you think it's a non-realistic target, or are you undecided on the matter?
It's very realistic because we already have one of the problems in a balanced budget is finding sources of funding. If you look at my blueprint on dawisi.com, at the tail end of the blueprint, you will see that we have other ways of funding our projects, and I think we will have a balanced budget.
Fantastic. So let's go to the third item on the box there. It's close Kano's out of school gap, and we're talking about out of children of school age that are out of school. I mean, is this a target you think is realistic in 4 years? Is it unrealistic in your opinion? Are you undecided on the matter?
We have devised a way of addressing it. Currently, we have up to about 2 million out-of-school children in Kano State, and we need about over 28,000 classrooms in Kano State to accommodate them, not to talk of the teachers and other requirements that we have. So I think in 4 years, it's a little bit unrealistic to think you can close the gap in 4 years' time.
There. Well, and finally, cut down the size of government. I mean, this is an issue all across Nigeria. Do you think that is something you can achieve in Kano in 4 years? Do you think it's a realistic target? Unrealistic? Are you undecided on the matter?
I haven't decided, because some of these things you need to be in government to understand how realistic it is, particularly cutting down the size of government. So for this one, it has to be undecided till I go into the government and see what areas I can cut down and know what to do.
I consider that a safe route for you to go at this point. I would like to thank you so much for tonight's governorship candidates of the People's Redemption Party, Saliu Tanko Yakasai. I would like to appreciate you for coming on our program on very short notice. I do, on behalf of NTA, I'd like to wish you very well in your current campaign, and by the end of the day, by this time, by Sunday or Monday most likely, we should be able to do a review of the governorship election, of course, across all states, and we should be able to get to you to get your opinion on the matter. Thank you so much for coming on the program.
Thank you so much, Mr. Nnamdi, for having me. Thank you very much, listeners, for staying this late to watch this program.
Well, now we're in a fresh countdown to the governorship and state houses of assembly elections, and this time around, it's actually 8 days until the next round of elections. The ballot will be back tomorrow, same time, God willing, with another set of guests. My name is Nnamdi Odipo. Bye for now.